In March 2010, a park ranger in rural Georgia stumbled upon an abandoned building hidden deep in the forest. But what he found in the basement wasn't just dust and debris. It was a silent archive of 32 human bodies not decayed, but clinically preserved. They were anatomical specimens, processed with surgical precision, stored on shelves, and tagged for shipment to medical schools. What he uncovered would expose a decades-old scheme, destroy a family's reputation, and force him to confront a devastating truth. One of the price-tagged victims was his own grandfather. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear this story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you the story. Khalil Henderson had been a Georgia State Park ranger for 5 years when he made the discovery that would change everything. March 12th, 2010, Friday afternoon. Khalil was doing a routine patrol in the remote woodlands of Chattahoochee Bend State Park, checking for illegal camping and trail damage after the winter season. He was 20 miles from the nearest road when he saw something that didn't belong. A structure, barely visible through decades of overgrowth. Vines covered the walls. Trees had grown up around it. If you weren't looking for it, you'd walk right past. Khalil got off his ATV and walked closer. It was a building, 2 stories. Wood siding painted white, though most of the paint had peeled away. The windows were boarded up. The front door hung crooked on broken hinges. Khalil pulled out his radio. "Base, this is Ranger Henderson. I've got an abandoned structure about 20 miles north of Checkpoint 7. Looks like it's been here a while. I'm going to check it out." "Copy that, Henderson. Be careful." Khalil approached the front door. He pushed it open. The hinges screamed. Inside was dark. He pulled out his flashlight. The beam cut through dust and cobwebs. He was standing in what looked like a reception area. A desk sat against one wall. Chairs lined the other wall. Everything was covered in thick dust. On the wall behind the desk was a faded sign. Dalton Brothers Funeral Services, serving families since 1952. A funeral home. Out here in the middle of nowhere. Khalil walked deeper into the building. His boots echoed on the wooden floor. He passed through a viewing room. Empty. Then an office. Then a preparation room with old equipment still sitting on counters. At the back of the building, he found a door. It was metal, heavy. A deadbolt lock hung open. Khalil opened the door. Stairs led down into darkness. He descended carefully. The air got colder. The smell changed. Chemical. Preservative. Something else underneath, old and heavy. At the bottom of the stairs was another door. This one was unlocked. Khalil pushed it open. His flashlight beam swept across the basement. Then he saw them. Remains. Dozens of them. Khalil stumbled backward. His flashlight fell. The beam rolled across the floor, illuminating metal tables, shelves, storage containers, and the remains of people everywhere. But these weren't normal findings. The remains were stored in airtight glass tanks and heavy sealed containers, protecting them from the decay of the humid Georgia air. They looked like anatomical specimens, the kind you might see in a university lab. Some were whole. Others had been clinically prepared. Anatomical elements on one shelf. Subjects laid out on tables. All of them had tags, numbers, labels. Khalil's hand shook as he picked up his flashlight. He counted 32 tables, 32 sets of remains, all of them preserved, all of them prepared for transport, all of them waiting. Against the far wall were filing cabinets, dozens of files, documentation. Khalil pulled out his radio with trembling hands. "Base, this is Henderson. I need police and a medical examiner at my location immediately. I've found human remains, multiple, at least 30, possibly more." There was a pause. Then, "Henderson, say again." "I've found bodies, 32 of them, in a basement. They're preserved. This is a crime scene. Stay where you are. Help is on the way." Khalil backed out of the basement. He went outside. He sat on the front steps of the abandoned funeral home and waited. His mind was racing. 32 bodies. Who were they? How long had they been here? What happened to them? 20 minutes later, he heard sirens. Detective Lawrence Mills arrived first. He was 48, gray hair, serious face. Georgia Bureau of Investigation. He'd been handling cold cases for 15 years. Ranger Henderson? Mills asked as he got out of his car. That's me. Show me what you found. Khalil led Mills into the building, down the stairs, into the basement. Mills stood in the doorway and stared. His face didn't change, but Khalil saw his jaw tighten. Jesus, Mills whispered. How many? I counted 32. Have you touched anything? Just the doors, and I grabbed a few files from the cabinet. For documentation, they're in my truck. Mills walked into the basement carefully. He examined the tables, the shelves, the preserved subjects. These aren't fresh, Mills said. These have been here a long time. They're professionally preserved, embalmed, prepared for anatomical study. For what? Khalil asked. Medical schools, research facilities. These are cadavers, bodies used for training doctors. Mills looked at the tags. But this isn't a legal operation. Legal cadavers come from body donation programs, registered, documented. This is something else. More vehicles arrived, crime scene investigators, a forensic anthropologist, photographers. The basement filled with people in white suits taking samples and documenting everything. Dr. Helen Foster was the forensic anthropologist, 51 years old, calm, professional. She'd been doing this work for 25 years. She examined the remains methodically, taking notes, photographing, collecting samples. After an hour, she approached Detective Mills and Khalil. All 32 appear to be African American based on skeletal features, Doctor. Foster said. The preservation work is professional, high quality, expensive. These were prepared for transfer to medical institutions. Can you date them? Mills asked. Based on the preservation technique and the condition of the tissue, I'd estimate these are from the 1980s through early 1990s, maybe 1982 to 1993. That's over 20 years ago, Khalil said. Yes. These bodies have been waiting here for over 2 decades. Mills walked to the filing cabinets. He pulled out a folder at random. Read it. Pulled out another. Another. These files document everything, Mills said. Names, dates, acquisition information, payment records. This was a business. Someone was brokering these individuals. He showed Khalil one of the files. The header read, Specimen Hash 4, Jerome Butler. Below that, date of death, the 3rd of April, 1985. Acquired from Family Cremation Request. Payment received from family, $1,800. Payment to MedCorp Biological Supply, $4,500. Status, prepared, awaiting shipment. They charged families for cremation, Mills said slowly. But they didn't cremate the bodies. They preserved them and sold them to a medical supply company. Khalil felt sick. For how much? Looks like they charged families $1,200 to $2,000 for cremation services, then sold the bodies to this MedCorp company for $3,000 to $5,000 each. Who owned this place? Mills checked more files. Found a business license on the wall. Dalton Brothers Funeral Services. Owner Maurice Dalton. Licensed 1952 through 1993. 1993. That's when this place closed? Looks like it. Mills found more documents. Maurice Dalton died August 19, 1993. Massive stroke. The business was never transferred. The building was abandoned. And the bodies were waiting to be shipped to MedCorp. But Dalton died. The shipment never happened. They've been sitting here for 17 years. Khalil looked at the preserved remains on the tables. 32 people, sold like merchandise. Forgotten in a basement for 17 years. We need to identify them, Khalil said. Their families need to know. We will, Mills promised. Every single one. The crime scene processing took 3 days. Dr. Foster and her team carefully documented each set of remains. They collected DNA samples, dental records, any identifying information they could find. The files helped. Each specimen had a folder with the person's name, date of death, and basic information. But the files didn't have addresses or next of kin beyond what was recorded at the time of death. Dr. Foster took the information back to her lab. She began the process of identification, running DNA through databases, checking dental records, searching for death certificates. Khalil went back to his regular duties, but he couldn't stop thinking about those 32 people in the basement. Every night, he saw them. The preserved remains, the tags, the price lists. 2 weeks after the discovery, Dr. Raymond Costa contacted Detective Mills. Costa was 59, a medical historian at Georgia State University. He specialized in the ethics of anatomical study and body procurement. "I heard about your case," Costa said in Mills' office. "The funeral home, the preserved remains. I think I can help you understand what happened." "Please," Mills said. Costa opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Body trafficking was a significant problem in the 1980s and 90s. Medical schools needed cadavers for anatomy classes. There was a legal process for this. People could donate their bodies to science, but there weren't enough donors. So a gray market developed. People selling bodies? Exactly. Funeral homes were perfectly positioned to exploit this. They had access, they had the facilities to preserve, and they had a built-in cover story. "The cremation," Mills said. "Right. Family pays for cremation. Funeral home takes the body. But instead of cremating it, they preserve it and transfer it to a medical supply company. The supply company sells it to a medical school. Everyone makes money except the family. What did the families get? Ashes. Usually cement dust or sand, something that looks like cremated remains. The families would never know the difference." Mills leaned back in his chair. How common was this? More common than people want to admit. There were several major scandals in the 2000s. The Tri-State Crematory in Georgia, the UCLA body donation program. The allegations go back decades. This case you've found, it's not unique. It's just one that got discovered. The files mention a company called MedCorp Biological Supply, Mills said. "Ever heard of it?" Costa nodded. MedCorp was one of the major anatomical supply companies in the Southeast. They operated from the 1970s through the late 90s. They supplied cadavers to medical schools across Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee. The company was run by a doctor named Vincent Kruger. Kruger died in 1999. The company dissolved in 2002. All the records were supposedly destroyed. Convenient. Very. But here's what I can tell you. MedCorp had contracts with at least 8 medical schools. If these 32 bodies were supposed to be shipped to MedCorp, they were destined for one of those schools. The students who became doctors in the 90s. Some of them learned anatomy on bodies that were obtained unethically. Mills made notes. "Can you get me a list of those schools?" "Already did." Costa handed him a paper. Emory University, Medical College of Georgia, University of Florida, University of Alabama, Meharry Medical College, 5 others. All of them acquired cadavers from MedCorp during the time period your bodies were found. None of them knew the bodies were obtained illegally. Costa gave a bitter smile. "That's what they all claim. We trusted our supplier. We had no reason to question the source. But here's the thing, Detective. When you're acquiring a human body for $10,000 or $15,000, you don't ask too many questions. You don't want to know the answers." After Costa left, Mills sat in his office staring at the list of medical schools. 8 institutions, thousands of students trained. How many of them learned on individuals who were stolen and sold? His phone rang. It was Dr. Foster. "Detective, I've completed preliminary identification on all 32 victims," she said. "I'm sending you the full report, but I wanted to give you the summary." "Go ahead." "All 32 are African American, as we suspected. Ages range from 19 to 74. Dates of death span from March 1982 to June 1993. 11 years. I was able to match dental records or DNA to missing persons reports for all of them. I have names for everyone." "That's good work. There's something else, Detective. All 32 families filed for death certificates at the time. Records show that Dalton Brothers funeral services billed for cremation in every single case. Some families paid directly. Others, like the indigent cases from the hospital, were billed to the county for services never rendered, which means all 32 families believe their loved ones were cremated. They aren't. They have cement or sand. Mills closed his eyes. We're going to have to tell them. Yes. And soon, this story is going to break. When it does, those families deserve to hear the truth from us, not from the news. Send me the list of names and last known addresses. I'll start making notifications. Detective, one more thing. Several of these victims were young, teenagers and 20s. They had their whole lives ahead of them, and they were treated like inventory. The families need to know that someone is fighting for them, that someone cares. I care, Dr. Foster. We're going to make sure their story gets told. The notifications took a week. Detective Mills drove across Georgia, visiting families, one by one, sitting in living rooms, delivering news that was 25 years overdue. Your father didn't abandon the family. He died, and his body was transferred to a medical supply company. Your mother's ashes aren't really her ashes. They're cement. Her real remains were found in a basement. Your son, who died in the car accident, the funeral home you paid, they never cremated him. They sold him. Every notification was devastating. Families who'd spent decades with one version of the truth suddenly learned it was all a lie. But Khalil didn't hear about any of this. He was back at work, patrolling, checking trails, trying to forget about the basement and the 32 bodies. 3 weeks after the discovery, Khalil was home. It was 2 in the morning. He couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the bodies, the files. Something was bothering him, but he couldn't figure out what. He got up, went to his home office. He'd made copies of some of the files before handing them over to Detective Mills, just a few, for his own records. He started reading through them. Names, dates, payment information. Specimen Hashon, Violet Brooks, age 74, died March 1983. Specimen Hash2, Curtis Randolph, age 67, died August 1985. Specimen Hash3, Pearl Daniels, age 48, died November 1986. One after another, 32 people, 32 lives reduced to specimen numbers and price tags. Then Khalil opened the file for Specimen Hashon 7. Name, William Jackson. Date of birth, the 3rd of May 1933. Date of death, the 15th of March 1985. Next of kin, Lorraine Jackson, wife, Monica Jackson, daughter, age 21. Address, 847 Pine Street, Macon, Georgia. Cause of death, cardiac arrest. Acquired from Street, Luke's Hospital Morgue. Payment to MedCorp, $4,200. Status, prepared for shipment, awaiting pickup. Khalil stared at the page. William Jackson, born 1933. His grandfather's name was William Jackson, born 1933, but that was a common name. Lots of William Jacksons in Georgia. He kept reading. Next of kin, Lorraine Jackson. His grandmother's name was Lorraine Jackson, Monica Jackson, age 21 in 1985. His mother's name was Monica. She would have been 21 in 1985. 847 Pine Street, Macon, Georgia. That was the address his mother grew up at, before his grandmother remarried and they moved. Khalil's hands started shaking. The 15th of March, 1985. That was the date his grandfather disappeared. His mother was 21. Khalil was only a toddler at the time, too young to remember the grandfather who vanished. His grandfather, William Jackson, Specimen Hashon 7. Khalil dropped the file. He stood up fast, backed away from the desk. No, it couldn't be. It was a coincidence. A common name, a matching address. It had to be. But the details all lined up. Every single one. His grandfather disappeared in March 1985. His grandmother was Lorraine. His mother was Monica, age 21 at the time. They lived at 847 Pine Street. Specimen Hashon 7 was his grandfather. Khalil walked past his body 3 weeks ago, logged it as evidence, photographed it, never recognized him. Because his grandfather wasn't a person anymore. He was a prepared anatomical specimen, cataloged, labeled, ready to be sold for $4,200. Khalil collapsed into his chair. He put his head in his hands. He couldn't breathe. His grandfather, the man his mother said abandoned the family. The man his grandmother waited 25 years to come back. The man who was supposed to have left them without a word. He didn't leave. He died. And he was sold. Khalil picked up his phone with shaking hands. He called the one person he could talk to at 2 in the morning, his best friend Marcus, also a park ranger. They'd been through training together. Khalil, it's 2 a.m. You okay? Can you come over? Right now? What's wrong? Just come, please. Marcus arrived 15 minutes later. He found Khalil on the floor of his office, surrounded by files, crying. Khalil, what happened? Khalil pointed at the specimen #7 file. Marcus picked it up. Read it. Oh my God, Marcus whispered. Khalil, is this my grandfather? Specimen #7 is my grandfather. Marcus sat down next to him. You walked past him. 3 weeks ago. I logged him as evidence. I took photographs of him. I saw the price tag. $4,200. That's what my grandfather was worth. That's what they sold him for. Does your family know? No. God, I have to tell them. My grandmother, my mother. They've been waiting 25 years for answers. And now I have to tell them he's been in a basement the whole time. Marcus put his hand on Khalil's shoulder. This isn't your fault, but I'm the one who found him. I'm the one who has to tell them. How do I do that? How do I tell my grandmother that the man she waited for was sold like merchandise? I don't know, but you have to. They deserve the truth. Khalil wiped his eyes. There's something else. The file says he was a prepared specimen. Do you know what that means? No, it means they processed him. They prepared his body for extensive anatomical study. They were going to sell him piece by piece to different institutions. That's what I saw 3 weeks ago. My grandfather. Processed. With labels. Like a science project. He started crying again. Marcus stayed with him until sunrise. The next morning, Khalil called Detective Mills. Detective, this is Khalil Henderson. Ranger Henderson, how can I help you? I need you to run a DNA test. On specimen #7. I think it might be my grandfather. There was a pause. Your grandfather, William Jackson, disappeared March 1985. My grandmother reported him missing. The report was never followed up on. She was told he probably left the family. Another pause. Ranger Henderson, I'm looking at the file for specimen #7 right now. The next of kin listed are Lorraine Jackson and Monica Jackson. Are those your relatives? Lorraine is my grandmother. Monica is my mother. Oh God. Khalil, I'm so sorry. We were going to notify your family this week. I didn't realize I didn't make the connection with your last name. My mother remarried when I was young. I took my stepfather's last name, Henderson, but I was born Jackson. Does your family know? Not yet, but I need to be sure before I tell them. Can you run the DNA? Of course. Can you come to my office today? I'll need a sample. Khalil went to the GBI office that afternoon. Dr. Foster was there. She took a cheek swab for DNA comparison. I'll expedite this, she said gently. You'll have results in a week. Thank you. Khalil, I'm sorry you're going through this. I can't imagine what you're feeling. I just need to know for sure. Then I can tell my family. That week was the longest of Khalil's life. He went to work. He patrolled trails. He answered radio calls. But his mind was always somewhere else. Specimen #7, his grandfather, waiting for DNA confirmation. 7 days later, Dr. Foster called. Khalil, the results are back. And it's a match. Specimen #7 is William Jackson. Your grandfather. I'm so sorry. Khalil sat down hard. Even though he knew. Even though all the details matched. Hearing the confirmation made it real. Thank you for telling me. Khalil, there's something else you should know. I reviewed the full preparation documentation. Your grandfather's body was prepared as a complete anatomical specimen. That means he was preserved whole and then carefully processed for educational purposes. The preparation was extensive and professional. I'm telling you this because you're going to have to explain to your family what condition the remains are in. I understand. I wish I had better news. You gave me the truth. That's what matters. After the call, Khalil sat in his truck in the ranger station parking lot. He called his mother. "Hi, honey," Monica answered. "How are you?" "Mom, I need to come see you and Grandma. Today. It's important. Is everything okay?" "I'll explain when I get there. Can you make sure Grandma's home?" "Of course." "Khalil, you're scaring me." "I know. I'll be there in an hour." Khalil drove to his grandmother's house in Macon. His mother was waiting on the porch. She hugged him when he got out of the truck. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Let's go inside. I need to tell you and Grandma together." They went into the living room. Lorraine was 75 now, small, fragile, but her eyes were still sharp. "Khalil, baby, what's going on?" Khalil sat down across from them. He didn't know how to start. There was no good way to say this. 3 weeks ago, I found an abandoned funeral home during a patrol. In the basement, there were 32 bodies. They'd been preserved, prepared for sale to medical schools. The funeral home was charging families for cremation but never cremating the bodies. They were selling them instead. His grandmother put her hand over her mouth. The investigation identified all 32 victims. One of them. His voice broke. One of them was Grandpa William. His mother stood up. "What?" Specimen #07. William Jackson, born 1933, died March 1985. DNA confirmed it. It's him. His grandmother started shaking her head. No. William left us. He left in March '85. He didn't die. He left. He didn't leave, Grandma. He died. He had a heart attack. The hospital morgue released his body to Dalton Brothers Funeral Services. They were supposed to cremate him, but they didn't. They preserved him and were going to sell him to a medical supply company for $4,200. His mother sat back down slowly. "We never paid for cremation. We never got ashes. The hospital just said they'd handle the disposition. We thought that meant they cremated him for free." "The hospital was part of the scheme," Khalil said. "They had a deal with Dalton. Unclaimed bodies, indigent patients, people who died without family present. The hospital would release the bodies to Dalton. Dalton would process them and pay the hospital a finder's fee. But William wasn't unclaimed," Lorraine said. "I was his wife. Monica was his daughter. We were there." "Were you there when he died?" Khalil asked gently. She thought back. "No. He died in the emergency room. They said it was very sudden. By the time we got to the hospital, he was already gone. They had us wait in a family room. They asked us questions. Had he ever said he wanted to be cremated? Did we have money for a funeral? We said we didn't have money. So they said the hospital would take care of it. We never saw him again. That's when they took him. The hospital marked him as indigent, released him to Dalton, and Dalton turned him into specimen #7. Monica was crying now. "I was 21. I had to tell everyone my father abandoned us because that's what we thought happened. He disappeared from the hospital. We never got a body. Never got ashes. Never got closure. People said he must have left, started a new life somewhere, and I believed it. For 25 years, I believed my father didn't want me." She looked at Khalil. "You know what that did to me? Growing up thinking my father chose to leave, the therapy I needed, the trust issues. All of it was based on a lie." "I know, Mom. I'm so sorry." Lorraine was staring at the mantel, at a small urn sitting there. "After 5 years, I couldn't take it anymore," she said. "Not having ashes, not having anything to bury. So I went to a different funeral home. I asked them to give me something. Anything. They sold me that urn. They said it had generic ashes, from cremated remains that were never claimed. It wasn't William, but it was something. I've been keeping that urn for 20 years, talking to it, praying over it." She stood up and walked to the mantel. She picked up the urn, opened it, poured a small amount into her palm. "This isn't him either, is it?" "No, Grandma. I'm sorry. She poured the ashes back into the urn, set it down, sat back on the couch. Where is he now? The medical examiner's office. All 32 victims are there. They're being held until we can arrange proper burials. I want to see him. Grandma, I don't think. I want to see my husband, Khalil. I've waited 25 years. I want to see him. Khalil looked at his mother. She nodded. Okay, I'll arrange it. 2 days later, Khalil took his grandmother and mother to the medical examiner's office. Dr. Foster met them there. Mrs. Jackson, I want to prepare you, Dr. Foster said gently. Your husband's remains have been preserved for 25 years. He won't look the way you remember him. The preservation process changes the appearance significantly, and the body was prepared for anatomical study, which means it has been processed. Are you sure you want to see him? I'm sure. Dr. Foster led them to a private viewing room. William Jackson's remains were laid out on a table, covered with a sheet. Take your time, Dr. Foster said. I'll be outside if you need me. She left. Khalil stood back. This was his grandmother's moment. Lorraine walked to the table slowly. She reached out, touched the sheet, then pulled it back. What she saw wasn't her husband anymore. It was a preserved specimen. The features were recognizable but altered. The body had been carefully prepared for science. You could see the clear evidence of the medical procedures. But Lorraine didn't flinch. She looked at the face, studied it, then she reached out and touched his hand. It's him, she whispered. I know it's him. She started crying. Monica came over and put her arm around her mother. They stood there together, looking at William Jackson for the first time in 25 years. I'm sorry I told people you left us, Lorraine said to the remains. I'm sorry I was angry at you. I'm sorry I didn't look harder. You didn't abandon us. You never abandoned us. They stayed for 20 minutes. Then Lorraine covered him with the sheet again. He deserves a proper burial, she said. A real one, with a headstone, with his name. So people know he existed, so people know he mattered. He'll have that, Khalil promised. All 32 of them will. Over the next 2 weeks, Detective Mills continued notifying families. Every notification was devastating. Every family had been living with a lie. Elder Violet Brooks' family had 8 children and 22 grandchildren. They'd scattered her ashes at her favorite church. The ashes were cement. Pastor Jerome Butler's widow, Esther, was 82. She'd kept his ashes on her bedroom dresser for 25 years. She talked to them every night, told him about her day, told him she missed him. The ashes were sand. Andre Griffin was 19 when he died in a car accident in 1991. His father, Calvin, was 68 now. He'd scattered Andre's ashes at his son's high school football field where Andre had been a star player. The ashes were crushed brick. Pearl Daniels was 48 when she died of cancer in 1986. Her 3 children had divided her ashes among them. Each kept a portion in their homes. All 3 portions were industrial ash. Curtis Randolph was 67, a World War II veteran with a Purple Heart. His family had buried his ashes at a veteran cemetery with full military honors. The ashes were concrete dust. 32 families. 32 devastating truths. 32 sets of fake ashes. The story broke nationally in early April. Jennifer Tate, a reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, had been following the investigation. She wrote a comprehensive article detailing the scheme, the funeral home, the preserved bodies, the medical supply company, the families who'd been lied to for decades. The article went viral. News outlets across the country picked it up. CNN, NBC, Fox News. Everyone wanted the story. Maurice Dalton's name was everywhere. His photograph appeared in every article. The man who stole bodies and sold them like merchandise. But Maurice Dalton was dead. He died in 1993. There was no one to arrest, no one to prosecute, no one to punish. Except his family. Richard Dalton was 65 years old. He was Maurice Dalton's son. He ran his own funeral home in a town 30 miles from where his father's business had operated. It was a legitimate business. Richard had never been involved in his father's scheme. But when the story broke, Richard's business was destroyed overnight. People protested outside. Windows were broken. His reputation was ruined because of his last name. Richard called a press conference. He stood in front of cameras and reporters and read from a prepared statement. My father, Maurice Dalton, was a good man who served this community for 40 years. These allegations are false. They are an attack on his memory and on our family's name. My father would never do what these people are claiming. Someone is lying. Someone is trying to destroy his legacy. He refused to take questions. He walked away. But the evidence was overwhelming. The files, the preserved bodies, the DNA matches, the family's testimonies. Richard's denial just made people angrier. Meanwhile, Khalil was dealing with his own anger. He'd been pressured by his supervisors to stay quiet. Don't talk to the press. Don't make statements. Let the investigation proceed quietly. Then Sheriff Walter Kemp called him into his office. Kemp was 61. He'd been sheriff for 20 years. He didn't like controversy. He didn't like bad publicity. Ranger Henderson, I've been hearing that you've been talking to reporters about the Dalton case. I haven't talked to anyone. That's not what I heard. I heard you gave an interview to that reporter from Atlanta. I didn't. Jennifer Tate contacted me. I told her to talk to Detective Mills. Well, make sure it stays that way. This case is bad for the county, bad for tourism, bad for business. The last thing we need is a park ranger stirring up trouble. Khalil stared at him. Stirring up trouble? 32 people were murdered and sold. They weren't murdered. They died of natural causes. What happened afterward was unfortunate. But it was 25 years ago. Let it go. Let it go. My grandfather is one of the victims. I know. And I'm sorry about that. But making a big public spectacle isn't going to bring him back. It's just going to hurt the community. The community needs to know what happened. The community knows. The story's been on the news. Everyone knows. Now it's time to move on. Bury the bodies. Hold a quiet memorial. Move forward. Don't drag this out. What about justice? Justice for who? Maurice Dalton is dead. Vincent Kruger is dead. There's nobody to prosecute. All we can do is bury the bodies and try to move on. And the medical schools? The ones who bought these bodies? What about them? That's not our jurisdiction. That's a federal matter. Let the FBI handle it. The FBI isn't investigating this. Then maybe there's nothing to investigate. Maybe those schools bought bodies in good faith. Maybe they didn't know where they came from. Khalil stood up. You want me to stay quiet? I want you to be smart. You're a public employee. You represent this department. What you say reflects on all of us. So yes, I'm asking you to stay quiet. For your own good. And for the good of the department. And if I don't, Kemp's face hardened. Then we'll have a problem. I'd hate to see your career end over something like this. Khalil left the sheriff's office. He was shaking with anger. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about his grandfather. About the 32 families. About Sheriff Kemp telling him to stay quiet. He thought about Richard Dalton denying his father's crimes. He thought about the medical schools that bought the bodies and claimed they didn't know. He thought about all the people who wanted this story to go away. And he made a decision. The next morning, Khalil drove to the abandoned funeral home. The crime scene tape was still up, but the investigation was complete. No one was there. He went inside, down to the basement. The bodies were gone, but the filing cabinets were still there. Evidence that had been photographed but not removed. Khalil searched through the files. He was looking for something specific. In the back of the bottom drawer, he found it. A leather-bound ledger, handwritten. Every transaction Maurice Dalton had ever made. Names, dates, amounts paid by families, amounts received from MedCorp, notes about quality, notes about pricing, notes about shipments. Every crime documented in Maurice Dalton's own handwriting. Khalil took the ledger. He photographed every page with his phone. Then he put the original back in the drawer. The next day, he sent the photographs to Jennifer Tate at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. That afternoon, Detective Mills called him. Khalil, did you take something from the funeral home? No, I found something. Then I documented it. Then I made sure the right people saw it. You gave it to the press. I gave it to a journalist. There's a difference. Khalil, you could be charged with interfering in an investigation. The investigation is over. You've identified the bodies. You've documented the scheme. The case is closed because there's no one alive to prosecute. That ledger isn't evidence in a criminal case anymore. It's evidence of historical fact. And the public has a right to see it. Mills was quiet for a moment. Sheriff Kemp is furious. I'm sure he is. He's demanding we arrest you for evidence tampering. Then you better come arrest me. I'll be at my apartment. But Mills didn't come. Because Khalil was right. The criminal investigation was over. The ledger wasn't needed for prosecution. And once the photos went public, there was no putting it back in the box. Jennifer Tate published the ledger contents the next morning. The article included photographs of Maurice Dalton's handwritten notes, his calculations, his prices, his business plan. One entry read, Specimen Haitian 7, Jackson, good condition, premium pricing, $4,200 to MedCorp. Note, cardiac tissue excellent quality, neurological structures intact, recommend full body plastination. Potential resale value $12,000 plus. Khalil's grandfather reduced to a product review. The article went viral again, even bigger this time, because now people could see Maurice Dalton's own words, his own handwriting, his own calculations of how much human bodies were worth. Richard Dalton's denials collapsed. You couldn't claim your father was innocent when his own ledger proved his guilt. The medical schools that claimed ignorance were exposed. The ledger showed that MedCorp had told them exactly where the bodies came from. Economically sourced cadavers from partner facilities. That was the phrase MedCorp used. And the schools had asked no questions. And Khalil's name was on the article. Jennifer Tate gave him credit for finding the ledger and making sure it went public. Within hours, Khalil started getting phone calls. Some were supportive. Many were not. You destroyed that family's name. Why are you causing trouble? Let the dead rest. Then the threats started. Anonymous calls, anonymous emails, anonymous letters. Keep your mouth shut or you'll end up like your grandfather. You think you're a hero? You're just stirring up trouble. Watch your back, Ranger. The letters got more specific. They referenced where he lived, where he worked, his daily routine. Khalil reported them to Detective Mills. Mills said they were taking them seriously. They'd increased patrols near Khalil's apartment. But the threats kept coming. Khalil's mother called him crying. Please stop. Please just let this go. I can't lose you too. His grandmother called. Khalil, baby, I know you're doing this for William. But it's not worth your life. Please be careful. His supervisors called him in. Sheriff Kemp was there. Ranger Henderson, you've become a liability. Your actions have brought negative attention to this department. We're placing you on administrative leave pending an investigation. Investigation of what? Your handling of evidence, your statements to the press, your conduct during the Dalton case. I found the bodies. I reported them. I helped identify them. What part of that is misconduct? You took evidence from a crime scene and gave it to a reporter. The ledger wasn't tagged as evidence. It was in an unsecured location after the investigation closed. That's not for you to decide. Khalil stood up. You want me gone because I made you look bad. Because I wouldn't stay quiet like you told me to. Because I exposed the truth. You're suspended for 2 weeks. Go home. Khalil went home. He sat in his apartment and thought about what to do next. The threats were getting worse. His job was on the line. His family was scared. But 32 people had been stolen and sold. Their families had been lied to for decades. Someone had to fight for them. That night, Khalil made a video. He sat in front of his phone camera and recorded himself speaking. My name is Khalil Henderson. I'm a Georgia State Park Ranger. On March 12, 2010, I discovered 32 bodies in an abandoned funeral home. Those bodies had been preserved and prepared for sale to medical schools. For 25 years, those people had been waiting in a basement while their families thought they'd been cremated. One of those bodies was my grandfather, William Jackson. Specimen has shown 7. He was sold for $4,200. Since I helped expose this crime, I've received death threats. I've been suspended from my job. I've been told to stay quiet, to let this go, to not cause trouble. But I can't do that, because 32 people deserve justice. Their families deserve the truth. And if speaking the truth costs me my job or my safety, then that's a price I'm willing to pay. My grandfather was a mechanic. He worked hard. He loved his family. And when he died, he was stolen. His body was processed and prepared to be sold like merchandise. His wife waited 25 years for him to come home. His daughter grew up thinking he'd abandoned her. I found him by accident. I didn't know he was there. But now that I know, I have a responsibility. To him, to the other 31 victims, to all the families. So if you're the person sending me threats, understand this. I'm not backing down. I'm not staying quiet. I'm going to make sure this story is told. I'm going to make sure their names are remembered. I'm going to make sure this never happens again. And if something happens to me, this video will prove why. You can't silence the truth by threatening the people who speak it. The truth is already out there. He posted the video on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. He tagged news organizations. He tagged the medical schools. He tagged the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The video went viral overnight. Millions of views, thousands of shares. And suddenly, Khalil was too visible to threaten, too public to silence. The death threats stopped immediately, because killing him now would prove he was right, would make him a martyr, would bring even more attention to the story. The video changed everything. Sheriff Kemp called off the investigation. Khalil was reinstated with full back pay. Richard Dalton stopped making public statements. The medical schools issued formal apologies. Emory University, Medical College of Georgia, University of Florida. All of them admitted they'd purchased bodies from MedCorp without properly vetting the source. All of them agreed to reform their body procurement policies. All of them established scholarship funds in the names of the 32 victims. It wasn't justice. Maurice Dalton and Vincent Kruger were dead. No one could be prosecuted. No one would go to jail for the actual crimes. But it was acknowledgement. It was truth. It was the victims' names being spoken. It was the families finally getting answers. And sometimes, that's all justice can be. A week after Khalil's video, Richard Dalton showed up at Khalil's apartment. It was 10 o'clock at night. Khalil heard pounding on his door. He looked through the peephole, saw Richard Dalton standing there. Khalil opened the door but kept the chain lock on. "What do you want?" Richard was drunk. Khalil could smell it from here. "You destroyed my life," Richard slurred. "My business is gone. My reputation is gone. All because of you. All because of your father. My father is dead. He can't defend himself, and you're dragging his name through the mud. Your father sold 32 people. One of them was my grandfather. He deserves to have his name dragged through the mud. He was a good man. He helped this community. He helped himself. To $4,200 every time he sold a body." Richard lunged at the door. The chain held, but the force shook the frame. "Give me that ledger. The original. I know you have it. I don't. It's evidence. It's with the GBI. Liar. You took it. You gave it to the press. I photographed it. Then I left it where I found it. Detective Mills collected it later." Richard pulled at the door again. The chain was starting to strain. "You ruined everything. My father's legacy, my business, my name. Your father ruined his own legacy when he decided to sell human beings." The chain broke. The door flew open. Richard stumbled forward. Khalil stepped back. He had his phone in his hand. He'd been recording this whole interaction. Richard swung at him. Missed, stumbled, fell against the wall. "I'll sue you," Richard shouted. "I'll sue you for defamation, for slander, for destroying my family's name. Sue me for telling the truth? Good luck with that." Richard tried to swing again. Khalil dodged. Richard fell. He was on the ground now, crying, drunk, defeated. "He was my father," Richard sobbed. "He raised me. He taught me the business. I can't believe he did this. I can't believe he was capable of this." Khalil felt a flash of sympathy. But only a flash. "Your father sold my grandfather. He sold 31 other people. He lied to 32 families. You can mourn your father, but you can't defend what he did." Richard pushed himself up. He looked at Khalil with red, wet eyes. "I want the ledger. I want to destroy it. I want it gone. It's evidence. It's protected. You can't destroy it. Then I'll destroy you." He lunged again. This time, Khalil was ready. He stepped aside. Let Richard's momentum carry him forward. Richard hit the doorframe hard. Then he collapsed. Khalil's neighbor across the hall opened her door. She'd heard the commotion. "Should I call the police?" she asked. "Already calling," Khalil said, phone to his ear. The police arrived 5 minutes later. They arrested Richard Dalton for assault, trespassing, and attempted intimidation of a witness. Khalil's doorbell camera had recorded the whole thing. Richard threatening him, Richard breaking down the door, Richard confessing that he wanted to destroy evidence. The video was played in court a month later. Richard Dalton was convicted. He received 2 years in prison for assault and obstruction of justice. It was the only arrest in the entire case, not for the original crime, but for trying to cover it up. And maybe that was fitting, because the cover-up had lasted 25 years, and now it was finally over. While all this was happening, Dr. Foster and Detective Mills were working with the 32 families to arrange burials. All 32 families wanted proper funerals, real burials, with headstones, with their loved ones' real remains. But they wanted more than that. They wanted everyone buried together, as a community, as a memorial. Julian Washington, the grandson of Elder Violet Brooks, became the spokesperson for all the families. He was 57, a community organizer, a Baptist deacon, a man who'd spent his life fighting for justice. "These 32 people were stolen together," Julian said at a press conference. "They were sold together. They waited together. They should rest together." He proposed a memorial cemetery, a place where all 32 victims would be buried, a place with a monument listing all their names, a place where families could visit, where people could learn the truth. The state of Georgia agreed. They donated land. They funded the cemetery. They built the monument. On November 7th, 2010, 8 months after Khalil found the bodies, the funeral was held. Over 1,000 people attended. Family members, community members, politicians, press. The ceremony was held at the Memorial Cemetery. 32 graves arranged in a circle around a central monument. The monument was 8 feet tall, black granite, gold lettering. At the top, "In memory of the stolen, victims of the Dalton body trafficking scheme, 1,982 to 1,993. Below that, in 2 columns, 32 names, their ages, their dates of death. Violet Brooks, age 74, March 1983. Curtis Randolph, age 67, August 1985. Pearl Daniels, age 48, November 1986. Jerome Butler, age 61, April 1985. William Jackson, age 52, March 1985. Andre Griffin, age 19, September 1991. On and on. 32 lives. 32 people who deserve to be remembered. At the bottom, stolen, but not forgotten. The ceremony began with prayer. A Baptist pastor from Atlanta led the service. "We gather today to lay to rest 32 souls who were denied peace for 25 years, who were stolen from their families, who were sold like merchandise, who were forgotten by the world but never by God." He read each name aloud. After each name, a family member placed a white rose on that person's grave. When he reached William Jackson, age 52, March 1985, Khalil and his mother and his grandmother walked forward together. They placed 3 white roses on the grave. Khalil's grandmother knelt down. She put her hand on the ground. "I'm here, William," she whispered. "I finally found you. I'm sorry it took so long, but you're home now. You're home." She stayed there for several minutes. Monica helped her up. They returned to their seats. After all the names were read, Julian Washington stepped to the podium. 25 years ago, our loved ones were stolen from us. We were told they were cremated. We were given ashes that weren't ashes. We were lied to. We were betrayed. And we lived with that lie for a quarter century. Some of us scattered ashes that were cement. Some of us kept urns that contained sand. Some of us prayed over remains that weren't real. We mourned, we grieved, we remembered, but we never had the truth. Until Ranger Khalil Henderson walked into an abandoned basement and found them, all of them, waiting for us. He gestured to Khalil in the audience. Khalil didn't know his grandfather was there. He was just doing his job. But when he found out the truth, he didn't stay quiet. He didn't let powerful people silence him. He didn't let threats scare him. He fought for our loved ones. He made sure their story was told. The crowd applauded. Khalil felt tears on his face. Today, we bury our loved ones properly. We give them the dignity they were denied. We speak their names. We tell their stories. We make sure the world knows what happened. Maurice Dalton is dead. Vincent Kruger is dead. We can't punish them. We can't bring them to justice. But we can remember the victims. We can honor their lives. We can make sure this never happens again. So today, we say goodbye. But we also say thank you. Thank you for waiting for us. Thank you for being patient while we found you. Thank you for giving us this chance to lay you to rest properly. You are stolen but not forgotten. You are gone but not lost. You are home. The ceremony ended with the burial. All 32 caskets were lowered into the ground simultaneously. Family members shoveled earth onto each grave. Khalil shoveled earth onto his grandfather's grave. With every shovelful, he thought about the journey. Finding the basement, reading the file, waiting for DNA results, fighting against people who wanted him silent, making sure the truth came out. His grandfather had waited 25 years in a basement, but now he was home. Now he could rest. After the burial, there was a reception. Families shared stories. They exchanged contact information. They promised to stay in touch. Khalil met all of them. Andre Griffin's father, Calvin, who thanked him for finding his son. Esther Butler, who said her husband would be proud. Pearl Daniels' children, who'd finally gotten closure. Each family had the same story. Years of not knowing. Years of being told their loved one had been cremated. Years of mourning over fake ashes. And now, finally, the truth. As the sun set, Khalil stood alone at his grandfather's grave. His mother and grandmother had gone home. Most of the crowd had dispersed. He looked at the headstone. Simple, elegant, true. William Jackson, the 3rd of May, 1933, the 15th of March, 1985. Beloved husband and father stolen but not forgotten. I found you, Grandpa, Khalil said quietly. I didn't mean to. I didn't know you were there. But I found you. And I made sure everyone knows what happened. I made sure you got a proper burial. I made sure your name would be remembered. He knelt down, put his hand on the earth, covering the grave. I wish I'd known you. Mom says you were a good man, a hard worker, someone who loved his family. You deserved better than what happened to you. But at least now you're home. At least now you can rest. He stood up, wiped his eyes, started to walk away. Then he stopped, turned back. I'm going to visit. Every year, on March 15th, the anniversary, I'll bring flowers. I'll tell you about my life. I'll make sure you're never alone again. He meant it, and he kept that promise. Every March 15th for the rest of his life, Khalil visited his grandfather's grave. He brought white roses. He sat and talked. He told William about his life, about his work, about the family. He told him about the scholarship program the medical schools created, about the reforms in funeral home oversight, about the new laws Georgia passed to prevent body trafficking. He told him about Richard Dalton's arrest, about Sheriff Kemp's resignation, about how the truth had finally won. And every year, other families visited too, on the anniversaries of their loved ones' deaths, on holidays, on random days when they needed to feel close. The memorial cemetery became a place of healing, a place where 32 stolen souls finally rested, a place where their families could grieve properly. And at the center, the monument stood, 8 feet of black granite with gold letters, 32 names that would never be forgotten. Because Khalil Henderson stumbled into a basement and refused to stay quiet. Because Detective Lawrence Mills fought for justice even when the criminals were dead. Because Dr. Helen Foster identified every victim and gave them their names back. Because Julian Washington rallied the families and demanded truth. Because 32 families refused to let their loved ones be forgotten. Maurice Dalton died in 1993. Vincent Kruger died in 1999. Neither faced justice for their crimes. Richard Dalton served 2 years for trying to cover up his father's legacy. It was the only conviction in the entire case. But the real victory wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the cemetery, in the monument, in the names carved in stone, in the families who finally got answers, in the truth that finally came out, in the 32 stolen souls who finally came home. Specimen #shown through specimen #32 were gone. In their place were 32 people with names and lives and families who loved them. Violet Brooks, Curtis Randolph, Pearl Daniels, Jerome Butler, William Jackson, Andre Griffin, all of them. Every single one. Stolen but not forgotten. That's what the monument said. And that's what Khalil Henderson made sure would always be true. The end.